Hello, everybody. I'm Simon Keogh, and some of you will know me from match days as the guy on the Tannoy system. I have also been over the past few months the interim medium manager at Leatherhead Football Club, and along with Ryan Herrick, who's done a great job videoing the games for us, and Joe Herbert on camera, we have been bringing you the content which you currently see on the website, Facebook, and Twitter. Tonight, I'm hosting your Q&A session on behalf of you, the fans, who sent in all the questions I will be asking tonight. I am pleased to say that we have two representatives from our club with me to answer these questions. Jeremy Smith, the club secretary, and club director, Gerald Darby. Good evening, gents. I hope most importantly that you've been keeping safe and well during these difficult times. I want to start with you both introducing yourselves and telling all the tanners watching this a bit more about yourselves. So I think we'll start tonight with Gerald.
Okay, Simon, thanks very much. Well, my name's Gerald Darby. I moved to Ashtead in 1982 and started following the Tanners the following year, 83-84 season. I was asked by the then chairman, Tom Dixon, the following year to join the committee, which I did. And I became chairman of the club in 1986 after the departure of Bo Reynolds. It's never been easy running a football club like Leatherhead. Football is a unique industry, in which a possible income is worked out, minus a possible expenditure, and the balance is given to the players. The only chance of the club making a profit is a cup run, and then, as we all know, the FA might even take it away from you. But we have had many problems in my time in the club. Notably in 2000, following the departure of David Zackheim as chairman. Tim Edwards took over, and with his team of volunteers, they stabilised the club. But since then, following Tim's very untimely death, the club has struggled to balance the books. We had the terrible flood in 2013, which wiped out the building housing Pitstop, which dramatically reduced our off-the-field income and was a huge financial blow to the club. The last 2 years have been very difficult, and particularly the last 15 months when contracts and agreements were made which were not financially viable in the light of the COVID epidemic. The full extent of these agreements were not realised by the other directors until July 2020. Luckily, 2 years earlier, Jeremy Smith had agreed to become the club's football secretary, and when the full implications of the commitments became clear, he took over temporarily as chief operating officer, including identifying our liabilities. He introduced other club members to the new management committee, and we finally are beginning to sort matters out. For various reasons, other directors have left the board, and I'd like to thank them all for the hard work that they've done in the past years. And thankfully, all of them have said that they're willing to help the club go forward from here. We still have problems, but we are confident that these issues will be overcome and we can move forward again. May I now introduce you to Jeremy, who will update you on the current situation of the club and outline what we're doing to try and turn the club around. And then I think under Simon, we will go ahead with the questions and answers. Over to you, Jeremy.
That's great. Thanks, Gerald. For those of you who don't know me, I lived in Bookham till I was 18, and I saw my first match at Fetcham Grove in 1965. During my teens, I was a good friend of Tim Edwards and Dave Laskowski, and we went to pretty much all the matches in the glory years together, including going down to Brighton, 5 up in Dave's Mini, Leicester on the Anchor coach, and Wembley, God knows how. But also we went to most of the home games, particularly at half time, because I worked at Sainsbury's then, and we'd sneak down in at half time free. But then I moved away and really only started coming again when we played Dulwich Hamlet in the playoff final of 2011, which was my first Leatherhead game for about 20 years. I took over from Gene Grant as club secretary in 2018, and I never imagined how much I'd learn about football or how much I'd get involved in helping the club. And to be honest, it's been pretty much full time since October. But before we get to the questions, I'd like to say a big thank you to the fans, to the staff, the sponsors, the players, Nicky and Macca, and my fellow board and committee members, past and present, who've worked so hard to keep us going over the last few months. It's not been easy, and many of us have lost loved ones over this time. I'd like to mention Mike Batchelor, a lifelong fan who died recently, and give my commiserations to his son Adrian, and also to Terry Gales and Chloe Baldwin, who used to work at the club, whose son Tom was born prematurely and sadly didn't make it. All of our hearts go out to them and to the others who have lost loved ones this year and last. Anyway, let's get back to Leatherhead and where we stand. The Isthmian League is still paused. No decision yet has been made to null and void the season. The National League South and North is in a colossal mess, with clubs being charged with failing to play, and other clubs like Tunbridge Angels furloughing their entire first team over the weekend and saying they'll play with juniors. And that means that both Tommy Wood and Deshaun Theobalds, who used to play for us, have now been furloughed, while their under-23s are representing Tunbridge. The FA have said that no decision will be made until after the Prime Minister's roadmap on 22nd of February. But I'm not holding my breath. I really cannot see a restart until August the 14th, when the new season will start. Gerald mentioned that we've had a few problems this year, but I don't really want to dwell on those. But one thing I will say, and it really sounds bad, is that COVID-19 has saved the club. When I took over the finances at the beginning of October, we were losing between £2,000 and £3,000 per week. We'd have run out of money at the end of January. Now, thanks to the government furloughing scheme and assistance from Mole Valley District Council, we're safe. Until today, which I'll speak about in a minute, we had not received a penny from the FA or any other sport-related agency since September. We're not out of the water yet. We owe money. We've lost our second biggest car parking client, and we still have a number of issues relating to the commitments made that have to be resolved. However, we have the will to get through it, and we even got a treasurer, Matt Ross, or Matt LaRoss as he likes to be called, who's actually an accountant, which must be a first for a long time. We've solved so many issues over the past few months, mainly due to things that hadn't been done over the last years. I'll only mention one, because I still remember Jeff Money's panic at opening a letter saying we're about to be fined £400 per day for not having complied with the pension regulator since 2017. We appealed against this, we won, we're now compliant. And these and other issues like these have been what the board and committee have been working on, and our to-do list is getting smaller. We will survive the season, and we will have a decent team out there in August. So I'm going to pass you back to Simon and the questions.
Okay, so we go on to our first question this evening, gents, sent in by some of the fans. This is a joint question about season tickets, and the question is from Dougie Fraser and Mike Bellaby in and around season tickets. So the first part is, I have a season ticket like many others, and I understand the reasons why football stopped, but what will you be doing to reimburse us for our financial loss? If nothing, this will make me think about purchasing another until things are back to normal. So what are the options for the fans? And there will be some fans that will be perhaps thinking that. There's going to be probably a wide variety of fans that will be thinking that, and some that are happy to continue to support the club. So what are the options around season tickets? Jeremy, if I could ask you to answer that.
Yeah, sure. Unfortunately, we can't really give a definitive answer at the moment because the season is only paused, not ended. There was a questionnaire sent round by the FA about a month ago, which all the clubs responded to. We haven't had the results yet, but I'm fairly sure that 90% of the clubs at least will say null and void the season. But one of the options was to continue the season in September. So basically, instead of stopping the season, just having a break and starting from scratch again. So it may well be that the season will actually continue in September. Once we know the official position, we'll make an announcement about next year. But what we are looking to do is to reward those who do renew for next season. I mean, we know that people will spend money on season tickets. Some people can't afford each match. Some people come along, it's really the only thing that they can afford. And they spend money at the clubs. We want people to come to the club as much as we can. But the other way it's sort of looking at it is we've lost all our income streams at the moment. We've lost most of our car parking. We've lost all the hospitality. We've lost all the match day income. So we've got to find a way in which we can still sell tickets for next season, but reward those fans who've been loyal to us. And that's what we're working on at the moment. And once we know that the season has officially ended, we'll make an announcement about that.
Okay, thank you.
But I think it's worth noting with season tickets, one of the reasons we give the early bird one and the season tickets, they really financially carry us through the summer. And without that, we still have money to pay out in the summer with the work on the pitch, which is very expensive year in, year out, and other costs which are normal for the summer. And so that income that we get from season tickets really carries us through to the start of the season. Without that income, it's going to be very difficult.
Yeah, and I think that's what probably fans, and with the greatest respect, because I'm a fan of Leatherhead FC, we probably don't think that way. So we don't think about what happens close season. And that's a really good point you've just made, Gerald. So
it is a very valid point.
Okay, so I've actually got a question for you now, Gerald, from
Right.
Brian Perkins.
Yes.
Now, as you have a long affiliation with the club, can you tell us how different it is from the day-to-day running of the club today as it was back in the 80s? And then the second question from him is, as someone who used to play back at the club, the technique and attitude of the players back in the 80s must be so different today compared to the past.
Right. Well, as in the 80s, there's never been enough income. Back then there was never, and there still isn't enough income to do what every club would like to do. I think in those days, players tended to live more locally to the club and stay at a club for longer. Other than Ian Henders, and now Jerry Manani. Jerry.
That's easy for you to say. That's easy for you to say, Gerald.
Jerry
Namani.
Other than Jerry, players come and go far more often now. I think it's true to say that in the 80s, there were very few clubs other than Premier clubs that had academies. But now that there's so many academies around, there are very good quality players, and a lot of them looking for clubs to play. And they tend to move around more, especially as they don't get a regular place in the team. I can't remember how many subs we used to have, if we had any, back in the 80s. But with the number of subs on a bench now, you get a lot of players who are pretty good who don't get a game. And you can understand them wanting to move on. That's, I think, one of the main difference. And the second part was just about the attitude I don't think attitudes changed. I think players still want to win. But one of the most important things that I've noticed is the change since the 80s is the really big difference between then and now in the difference in the playing surfaces that these players play on. We had an awful pitch back in the 80s. It was concave, all the water ran from the surface into the middle of the pitch, which was just a mud heap. And we now finish the season with a better pitch than we used to start the season. We're very lucky that we have a brilliant groundsman, Dave Blaskowski, who spends countless hours making sure that our pitch is one of the best in non-league football. But also the science behind grass pitches has moved ahead. There are many different blends of grass seeds that suit different soil formations and machinery that helps every aspect of soil drainage and encouraging the grass to grow. Since 2000, when Tim took over, we put hundreds of tons of topsoil on the pitch, and we spent many, many thousands of pounds on summer work. And that's why I mentioned before how without season ticket donations, that's going to be quite difficult to do this year. But with Dave's devotion to the pitch, then, we now have and we will have a very good pitch. I honestly believe, whether it's true or not, that Dave is probably the happiest man in the club this season, because he's the only person who has gained by the lockdown, in that he hasn't had those horrible men with great big football boots trampling all over his beautiful pitch. But I hope that next season, Dave, we'll be back to normal and you can be as grumpy as you want.
He might be grumpy, but we love him. And you're right. What
Absolutely,
a great job he does, doesn't he? Absolutely fantastic job. Okay, thank you for those answers, Gerald. So next question we've got is from Richard Dory Boys. He is, of course, one of the members of the Tanner Supporters Club. And he's got quite a few questions. He wants his money's worth, does old Richard. I'll start from the top. And this time we'll ask you to answer these, please, Jeremy. So I'll go with the first one. It says, what is happening re the main shirt sponsor from last season? Are they carrying on for next season?
Okay, well, I'll start with Richard anyway, because Richard Dory Boys has actually won the prize for the most questions asked, and it's 8. I'm not quite sure what the prize will be yet, but I'm wondering what to do with the Leatherhead face mask that I bought from him after the epidemic is over. So, Richard, you may get it back from me. But thanks, Richard. I've been wearing it proudly around town. Anyway, the first question is about the main shirt sponsor from last season. Are they carrying on? And again, I don't really have an answer for this one. Macca has been in touch with all of our sponsors throughout the season, particularly the Sporting Bet portfolio, who are our main shirt sponsor. And obviously, they haven't quite received the amount of exposure either we or they would have liked. There's also the question of how long sponsorship from betting-related companies will be allowed. So basically, we shall just have to see what happens and who we can get to commit to next year. But we do thank the rest of our sponsors who've stayed with us, and we do hope that, with a full season next season, we can actually make it up for them and give them the proper experience that they want.
Okay, thank you for that. Second question from Richard. So what are the club's ambitions for next season?
Well, we're working with Matt Ross, the new treasurer, to build a playing budget. We hope to have that by the end of March, so that Nicky will know what he's got to do over the summer to build a team. But another thing that we don't know is what sort of financial state other clubs are in our league. We've talked about the problems in the National League South at Tunbridge Angels and Dover, but I was talking to the secretary of one of the clubs in the Isthmian League. They can't pay the electricity bill. you know, there are clubs that are so broke that they just don't know whether they're going to survive through next season. But with Leatherhead, we've come a long way since the day we had to win at Met Police under Jimmy Bullard in April 2017 to stay up. And from my personal goal next season is maintaining our Premier League status. But Nicky is going to do a similar interview in a few weeks where he may be able to be more focused and hopefully more optimistic. But it really is too early to say. But we feel we're in a reasonably good state. We'll be able to put out a good team on August the 14th, and we just hope that we can be competitive in the league.
Okay, thank you. Next question from Rich is there any likelihood of any new investment in the club?
We've had a number of people actually approach us with offers to invest in the club. In particular, one old fan of the club. So we're looking at those. We're looking at a number of options, including a supporters trust, greater links with Leatherhead youth, and also outside investment. Richard Dakin, who is on the committee, is running with this, but until we come out of lockdown, we can't be more definite. But certainly there are offers available of investment in the club.
Fantastic news. Next question from Rich is, will the club shop be stocked and open next season?
Well, it's funny he should ask that, because we had a wider committee meeting last week, and Susie Williams raised the same issue. Are we going to have the club shop open next season? I mean, we'd love to get it open again. We just need someone to staff it and then decide what we can afford to lay out to stock it up. I'm afraid it hasn't really been a priority yet, but it's something that I would like to see as a proper club shop. So particularly visiting fans can come in and buy stuff, buy mementos, have a few shirts for sale, etc., etc. Definitely, we want to get it open. We also need to work out COVID-wise what we can do in such a confined space. But club stuff is still available on the internet, and we hope to broaden that as well next season.
Okay, great stuff. So question number 5 from Richard. The board currently consists of 1 member. Does this comply with any regulations for the club? And are there likely to be any additions to the board?
I checked with the FA about this, and a board of 1 member is acceptable to the FA, although it's recommended to have at least 2 members. We do need to build a new board. We need to build the whole infrastructure up again, but we're not rushing at the moment to put a new chairman in place. So Gerald's holding the fort, doing so brilliantly well, and we are legal with the league and the FA.
Fantastic. I think you've touched on this earlier, but one of the questions he's asked is, what's the financial position of the club?
Yeah. Well, that's something that I spent 2 months going through the detailed financials in October, and Matt Ross has now taken over. To be honest, it's not great, but I think from what I've heard is that we were in much more trouble before in 2000. All our bills are being paid. We do have some creditors, but we're negotiating payment terms with them. We took a bounce back loan over the summer, and the government has extended the time period on that, so the monthly repayments are going to be lower. Matt's just finalising last year's accounts, which need to be in by April, and will be, so we'll be compliant that way. And also he's building a month-by-month plan for next year, so that we'll be able to see how we're going during the season and not have the huge shock that we had when we found out how much we were going to run out of money this season.
Okay, another question from Richard, second to last, is have the club applied for any funding or grants that might be available?
The answer is yes. Dave Blaz and I applied for all sorts of grants last summer, and in total we got 19,500. Council the Mole Valley District Council have also provided help through their closed business lockdown payment and local restrictions support grant. So we got another bunch of money, not quite that big, in the last few weeks. We also applied, and I said we got some good news. We also applied last week to the Football Foundation Winter Survival Fund, and we heard today that our application has been, if not totally, but mainly approved, and we hope to receive some additional funds in about 3 weeks. And finally, John Dean and I have applied for a pitching in grant to keep the under 23 team going and to support the new Leatherhead FC women team. And we hope to hear about that next week as well.
Fantastic. And on that subject, I mean, what great news this week that we've now brought a women's team into the family as well. Brilliant news this week, and very well received on the social networking platforms as well.
Oh, good to hear that.
Excellent. So last one from Rich. Is the club ground sharing again going on next season, and what type of revenue will this generate?
Yeah, I'll start this one off and then hand over to Gerald, because it was Gerald's deal with Epsom & Ewell. But it was a 2-year deal signed with Epsom & Ewell. So yes, they will be ground sharing with us next season. I can't go into the financial details of it, but we have an excellent relationship with them. And Mel, their chairman, recently donated 3 CCTV cameras to the club. And if you want to add something, Gerald, on Mel?
Well, no, I can only reiterate what you've said, Jeremy. We have got a very nice relationship with them. Obviously, been totally messed up this season, but not for any. There's certainly no animosity between the two of us. Both sides understand what the problems are, and we're looking forward to next season. We would like to. We discussed this recently about making an even longer deal with them, which once we can get back talking again, you don't know anything else, we're certainly going to. They're very happy with us. We're very happy for them to be with us. Let's just move on from there, really.
Okay, next question is for Gerald, and this is from Colin Ward. Now, Colin's actually got 5 questions, and I'll hit you with the first one. Colin wants to know, what has happened to Richard Brady's shares?
Right, Richard Brady and Duncan Evans' shares are back with the club. They've never been reallocated to anyone, as we want to discuss this with the supporters as to where the shares will be held. And when we come on to a future question, the last one, I'll expand on that.
Okay, that's fine. So the second question from Colin then is leading on with shares. When are the club issuing a shareholders agreement that sets out what happens to shares when someone dies, as Gerald and Christine will not live forever? I will add in brackets, he says, we hope they do.
Well, it's jolly nice to know that Colin's mellowing a bit, because a few years ago, I don't think he may have well done that with Christine, but I don't think he'd have done that with me. But never mind. Thank you, Colin. Again, it's an issue that we are discussing. We discussed it the other day. Both Christine and I, who actually between us have got 50% of the shares of the club, know what we want to do, are very willing to do, and we just need it to happen really now. Again, I'll deal this with the last bit when I can be clearer with it.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Thank you for that. So next question from Colin was, who are the new shareholders on Company's House?
Well, there are no new shareholders.
Right, okay. Right, okay, well, that's that one cut short, isn't it? I don't know where he's seen that information from, but you're suggesting that there are no new shareholders, so he's clearly got his information slightly wrong there.
Well, Colin can always go and look on Company's House website. All you've got to do is to type Leatherhead Football Club Limited into Google, and you'll find out who the shareholders are.
Right, okay. Well, they might be new compared to the last time he looked, but then of course we don't know when was the last time he looked. So we'll give him the benefit of the doubt.
Well, I was obviously a hell of a lot younger then, probably.
Oh, excuse me. I had to mute there whilst I nearly choked. Anyway, right. Okay. So another question from Colin was, what was Lawrence allowed to pass his shares? I think that's why, perhaps.
Yeah.
Why was Lawrence allowed to pass his shares to others without recourse to the fans?
Well, again, that Colin's got that slightly wrong. Lawrence, who was adamant that he wasn't going to release any shares unless he had the full respect of his decision from the members. And at the AGM in 2018, I think it was, they all approved his allocation of where the shares were going to go. That was passed, and he would not have let one of those shares go without getting it rubber stamped by the supporters.
Right. Okay. Thank you. And then last question from Colin is, why did the club instigate one share, one vote in all matters rather than 70% needed to pass a resolution?
Well, I'm not, again, quite sure where he gets that from with the one share, one vote. We've never actually had a share vote. And in fact, it is necessary to have 75% of the shares agreeing to pass a resolution. It is our intention, when we can, to have all the club shares in one place, controlled by the members. I did suggest that the TSC could own the shares, but unfortunately, the TSC isn't a legal entity. We would have to form a trust to administer the club with trustees, which I think is very viable. However, as Jeremy has said, Richard Dakin and ourselves are looking at various structures to the future. But this is one that we really want to push ahead, because it's one that we can do without having to bother with outside influences or anything else.
And it's also been successful with clubs like Wimbledon, very successful, the Supporters Trust at Wimbledon.
Yeah.
And again, you can search out, there's lots of clubs that have Supporters Trusts. We're just trying to work out what the right structure is for Leatherhead and how we can take it, how we can get it set up without too much cost, and how we can move it forward.
Okay, next question is for you, Jeremy. It's from Mike Powell. He says, as there are continuing emails with individuals' resignations, perhaps you could clarify the exact roles of the committee and the board, and also where the supporters club come in at the present time. Obviously, a well-run and well-established club would help attract outside help and finance, perhaps the finance necessary for the club to survive and to progress.
Okay, as I mentioned earlier, we need to reconstitute the board. At the moment, Gerald is working with me, Richard Dakin, Matt Ross and Steve Brown. And Richard, Matt and Steve are the committee at the moment. Richard Dakin is taking a role looking forward at what our options are. Matt Ross is treasurer, and Steve Brown is doing two things. One, he would be doing match day management if we had matches. But secondly, he's working with Jeff to make sure that the ground is in decent shape for next season. So we've all got our own roles on the committee. We realise, though, that we need more people, and particularly when the season starts. One new recruit is Paul Bradbury, who's recently taken over as a membership secretary. And we also know that we need some younger blood as well. And we are talking with some other individuals, half of our ages, who will bring fresh ideas to the club.
So the next question from Mike Powell. It says here that there are some young, good players at the club, as well as experienced players. And with guidance from the manager and the assistant manager, perhaps we can get some stability back at the club and possibly some financial help.
Okay, I mean, last season we actually had one of the most stable teams we've ever had. So stability isn't everything. But what we also did last season was we set up the under-23 team with Nick Brown at Leatherhead Youth. But unfortunately, the sudden pause of the season really froze any progress we'd made. A couple of their players came on as substitutes, but really we didn't get to the resolution we wanted, where we were getting a stream of players coming through from the under-23s into the main team. COVID put an end to that. This summer, we're going to be having trials for both the first team and the under-23s, and we're looking at getting a lot of young players in. And there's definitely going to be changes in next year's team. But we hope that some of those that have come through the ranks, like Will Seeger, will still be with us. And of course, his dad as well, because what would a match be without Brian Seeger on the touchline?
Yeah, everyone loves Brian. Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much for that. This isn't really a question that he's put. There's more of a statement, but perhaps you can just add a little bit to it. So Mike's written, you seem to have a good fan base, so don't let them down. He's telling you off here, by the way, Jeremy. Don't let them down. They are vital to the club's existence, along with good, honest management.
Right. Let's take this. I had prepared an answer for that one, but I'm just going to go off the rails a bit here. Honestly, we probably should have communicated more at the beginning, but with COVID going on, there was nothing to say. We didn't know what was happening. We still don't know what was happening. We've got Simon now taking over as media manager, which is certainly a very professional way forward. And anything that we hear will be pushed out through social media and the website. It's just a waiting game at the moment, though. But the point about honest management is, to me, it's that management have all got to be fans. You know, we've had a variety of people come in the last few years from different places, and I'm not going to name any names, but if you're not a fan of Leatherhead, you shouldn't be on the board. And that's what we want. We want fans to be involved. We want people who love the club, have loved the club for years, getting involved. The TSC has done an absolutely wonderful job in bringing together Leatherhead fans. What we now need is to get people who've done jobs with the TSC, but now getting involved in running the club itself.
Thank you. And thank you for calling me professional. That's the first time in my 50 years. Okay, so that's the end of that little question section. That was from Mike Powell. Thank you, Mike. So we've got another Mike now, and this is open to the pair of you, really, these questions. This is from Mike Parsons. So Mike wants to know, where do you see Leatherhead FC in 5 or even 10 years' time? How realistic is this in our present position?
Well, Gerald, should we both answer that? Do you want to have a word and then I'll have a word?
Yeah, sure. It's a bit difficult for me, really. I had a phone call from Wally Wetron this afternoon, wishing me a very happy birthday for later this week. And unfortunately, it's my 80th birthday. So I think to sort of come up with a plan for the next 10 years, my plan is to stay above ground. And I suppose as Leatherhead, is to make a stable club. I always think that our safe place is within the Isthmian League. I'd like to, at least for the next few years, see us stay within the Isthmian League. As Jeremy said earlier, the jump up is huge, and we need to really stabilise the club where we are, which we're working on, and then build up from that. That's what Dorking did. They've been going for a number of years, and they built up gradually. It's an evolution, really, and we had a setback with our evolution, but let's hope we can move it forward.
Yeah, well, it's a really tough one. And to be honest, we don't really know how the world of non-league football is going to shake out after this.
No.
there were planned changes to the pyramid, whether those will happen in the next few years or not. But my sort of view of where we want to get to isn't so much what league we're going to be in or where we're going to be in that league. It's more to see us as a genuine community club. And that's not just the first team, but with junior teams and the women's teams as well. And how we get there is not yet decided, but we've had a very fruitful meeting with Leatherhead Youth last month, and we'll be having further meetings with them and with Mole Valley District Council shortly. And I'd like to add that I've been going to Fetcham Grove for 55 years, and I don't want to stop going to Fetcham Grove. But we have to realise that it may not be the place to build a long-term home. The costs of keeping it going are growing and growing each year. The proximity to the River Mole doesn't help. And, you know, we've got to look forward as to community football in Leatherhead and where the best place for it to be.
Thank you for that honest answer. Okay, so this sort of goes on, and you sort of answered this really, but I mean, bearing in mind the information that we came out with at the start of this video with regards to Tunbridge Angels and with regards to Dover, one of the questions that he's asked is, would any promotion to the National League South be sustainable? I think we already know the answer to that, but guys, please come in.
Yeah, well, one thing our previous chairman, Daniel, was ambitious, and he asked me to do a study last year on what it would need for us to go up. We never got around to fully pricing it, but the biggest issue is the terracing or the fencing off of the grass bank. Grass banking is not allowed in the National League. So actually converting that into terracing or losing that as capacity is the first thing that we have to do. And if we lose it as capacity, then we have to build capacity somewhere else. So there's a lot of cost in the actual infrastructure that would need to be addressed in the first year. As for sustainability, I had a really good conversation with, I think it was Hampton and Richmond. And what their view was that the operating costs are similar. You know, you don't need any more people to be in the league above, but the travel costs and the player costs are higher. I don't know if you guys remember a few seasons ago, I think it was the first time that Concord Rangers actually appeared on our radar screen. And they went all the way down to Truro for a match, which got called off at about 6 o'clock. And then they had to come all the way back again and then go back down to Truro again the week after. And that was National League South. And so the costs associated with being at that level are much higher. But there are benefits as well. You do get money trickled down from the English Football League, which make up some of that. And hopefully you get bigger gates as well. Though as East Thurrock found, even being in National League South, they were still only getting 200 or 300 a week per game. But it's really all down to investment. You only have to look at Dorking to see what can be done, but it needs serious money. And I think the club has the will to move up a level. And if you look at how many players that we have or have had that are playing well in the National League South, getting the team is not the problem. It just comes down to the money, not as a one-off, but continuing ongoing revenue to carry on and build a team, keep a manager, and play at that level.
Yeah, just talking about finance there, Jeremy. I mean, I was watching Mick Sullivan's banter show last night, and he had some guests on there from Havant, and he had Mark Watt on there from Dorking. And, you know, Mark was talking about costs of up to $6,000 in travel costs for some of the away games that they're having to do. And when you think about it, $6,000. I mean, he did also mention that he gets over £500,000 in sponsorship, which obviously helps. But it just gives you an idea where we are compared to where the next level is. And I think as fans, and I'm first and foremost, I'm a fan of Leatherhead FC. That's why I come down and I do what I do match days. I think we need to just remember that, remember where we are. So it's the old adage, isn't it? Learn to walk before you can run a little bit, really.
Yeah, I know. I don't know if you were at the match when we played the Sutton under-23s last season.
Yeah, I was, yeah.
Yeah, the Sutton secretary, Ray Ward, actually lives in Leatherhead. And I was talking to him at the game, and he said travel was their biggest problem. And that's in the National League. And they have games at places like Barrow, or they did anyway, and they have to do overnights. So it's not so much hiring a cost and getting all the players over there. You've got to get a hotel as well, feed them and everything. It's the higher level you get, the costs get more and more.
So really, we're better off staying where we are, aren't we? If you ask me.
Makes it a lot easier.
Look, it's nice to play bigger. It's nice to play better.
It makes Brightling seats look like a home game, doesn't it?
Listen, I've done that. I've done that Truro journey last season with my son in the FA Cup, and you know what? I mean, for them to have to do that, what they did with Concord, their back is crazy. Really, it's such a journey. Gentlemen. Well, it looks like that's the end of our questions from the fans. That's all the questions that we received from some of the fans at Leatherhead FC. Is there anything you two guys would like to add before we sum up?
Yeah, if I could. I'd like to really seriously thank the Supporters Club for what they've done to help us out this season. As you know, we managed to get a grant for the new floodlights and from the Football Stadia Improvement Fund. But we still had to find 30% ourselves. And they stepped forward and came up with half of that, which is incredibly generous of them for what they've done. And the money's there. And I want to thank Christine Edwards, because in memory of Barbara, she's come forward with a very substantial helping towards the new floodlights. And that will mean that we will be able to get them done in April, get them finished. And let's hope we can, for the opening of the new floodlights, whenever we start them, that we can get perhaps a decent side down. One of the Premiership side might be able to send a team down so that we can open it in style and make some money, because this is what the pre-season is going to be about this season. The sooner we can get the pitch being worked on so that the pitch can be ready perhaps for July, and we can have quite a few good pre-seasons. But I would once again like to thank the Tennis Supporters Club for all the help they've given us. And, you know, as we've said earlier, it is our intention to try and make the Tennis Supporters Club, through a trust, own the football club, because they deserve to own the football club. Yeah, I think that's enough for me.
Yeah, that's brilliant, Gerald. I mean, there's nothing much more I can say to that. It's the reason I go to matches is the fans.
Yeah.
You know, I don't like sitting in the director's box. You don't like sitting in the director's box. We like to be on the edge of the pitch, or I like to be behind the goal where the banter goes on. There's some great people there, and let's just bring some great football to Leatherhead. So really, thanks to the fans. Keep going, and we'll see you on August the 14th, if not before.
Brilliant stuff. What a great way to finish off. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time this evening. I hope the fans found it really informative, and we'll try and do something like this again to keep them informed moving forward. And hopefully, I think you mentioned it a little bit earlier, we're going to try and get Mr. Bull to do these. And we know how he doesn't really like social networking and so on, but he's already agreed to do it. So we'll get him involved, and we'll do something similar with him as well. So in the meantime, thank you from me, and hopefully the fans will get something out of this, and I look forward to doing this again with you guys. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Simon. Yeah, thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks, Simon.
Cheers.
Cheers. Good night.
Cheers.